10 years living with guilt, the truth behind my sister's disappearance. My name is Carter Rowe. 10 years ago, my sister disappeared, and I've known more than I ever admitted. Trust me, you'll regret skipping this story. So before you sit back and listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Ethan's Way. Now get in the mood to listen to this story because it might be the ultimate sweet revenge. I still remember the smell of rain that night. It had just started to drizzle when she slammed the door behind her, and the wind carried in the scent of wet asphalt. That's the last time I saw her, my younger sister Lila. I stood there on the porch, arms crossed, heart pounding with anger I couldn't even explain. And then, she was gone. To everyone else, she disappeared without a trace. But I saw her walk away. It's been 10 years, and I still hear that door in my dreams. The creak of the hinges, the echo of her footsteps. No matter how many times I try to replay it, I always stop at the same moment when I let her leave without saying a word. People think I was just the grieving brother, the one who searched posted flyers and stood beside my parents during TV interviews. But if they knew what I kept inside me, they'd never look at me the same way again. Lila was the kind of girl who lit up a room without trying. She was younger than me by 2 years, but wiser in ways I never acknowledged until she wasn't there to remind me. She saw through people, through me, and maybe that's what made our last conversation explode the way it did. That night, we fought, and it wasn't one of those sibling spats about who gets the remote. It was real sharp-edged raw, words you can't take back. She accused me of something, and I didn't deny it. I deflected, I blamed her, I said things I didn't mean. Maybe I even meant some of them. That's the part that haunts me. The guilt doesn't hit you all at once. It creeps in like mold growing in silence. At first I told myself she'd come back in a few hours. Then I told myself she just needed time. By the second day, I was rehearsing lies without even thinking. When Mom asked what we talked about that night, I just said we were both tired. When the cops asked if I saw her leave, I shook my head. No, nothing. I went to bed early. I thought it would be temporary. I thought I'd eventually confess. But every hour that passed made it harder to go back. The lies hardened like cement around my mouth. I stood there beside my family, watching them break while pretending I was breaking too. But the truth was, I was the one with the chisel in my hand. People think guilt is loud. It's not. It's quiet. It's in the way I avoid certain streets, the way I can't hear rain without my stomach turning, the way I still have her number saved in my phone even though I know it's been disconnected for years. I used to visit her room once a week, sit on her bed, breathe in the stale scent of her perfume, and try to remember if there was any kindness left in my voice that night. Sometimes I'd find one moment her smile when she mentioned the college she wanted to go to, and other times I'd remember the flash in her eyes when I said she was just jealous of me. I was the golden child, the responsible one, the mechanic's son who took over Dad's garage. And Lila, she wanted more. She didn't want the small town life. She wanted to write novels, live in the city, meet people who didn't know how to change tires, but knew how to change the world. I used to tease her for it. Maybe I envied her. Maybe I hated that she had dreams bigger than ours. That night she told me she was leaving. She had a scholarship. She didn't tell Mom or Dad yet she came to me first hoping for approval support. I laughed at her. I told her she wouldn't last a week, that she was selfish to leave Mom while she was sick, that she was turning her back on the family. I unloaded every bitter thing I'd been holding on to, and when she cried, I turned away. I didn't follow her. I didn't stop her. And the next morning, when her bed was empty and her phone went straight to voicemail, I told myself she'd cool off and come back. But she never did. The police searched the woods. Volunteers combed the lake. A year passed then too. By year 5, even Mom stopped putting out candles on her birthday. But I never stopped remembering. Now, a full decade later, someone's asking questions again. A woman showed up at the garage yesterday, said she was writing a story about small-town mysteries, said she wanted to talk about Lila. And something in her eyes told me she wasn't just a journalist. She knew something. And maybe she knew everything. It was supposed to be a regular Thursday night. Cold pizza reruns on the TV, the familiar hiss of the heater rattling through our old house. Nothing extraordinary. Nothing to warn me that I was about to make the worst mistake of my life. Lila came home late from her shift at the diner. I heard the jingle of her keys hit the bowl by the front door, followed by the soft creak of her boots as she kicked them off. I was in the kitchen, arms deep in the sink, trying to scrub grease off my hands from work. I didn't even look up when she walked in. She asked if Dad was home. I told her no, just me. And then out of nowhere, she said she needed to talk. I dried my hands, leaned against the counter, and gave her a nod. I didn't expect the next words out of her mouth. I'm leaving Carter. Tomorrow. The sentence hung in the air like smoke. Thick. Suffocating. What do you mean you're leaving? She sat at the kitchen table, pulled her sleeves over her fingers like she used to when she was nervous. I got the scholarship. Full ride. I found a room. It's far. I've been planning it for a while. Without telling anyone, I snapped, I'm telling you now. And that was the trigger. Something deep in me twisted resentment maybe, or fear. I saw what she had that I never allowed myself to chase escape. A future beyond oil stains and busted transmissions. You're just gonna walk out? I asked. Leave Mom when she's barely getting by. Leave Dad with the garage. Leave me to pick up everything. She didn't raise her voice. This is my life, Carter. I've given enough to this family. Maybe it's time I live something for myself. That was when I said it. Maybe you're just afraid you'll be forgotten if you stay. Her face changed. I watched the light in her eyes go dim like someone flipped a switch. You think I don't see what you're doing? I went on. You want to run away and pretend like you're better than all of us? She stood slowly, fists clenched. No, I want to stop pretending I'm okay being stuck. And then I crossed a line. You're selfish. Silence. The kind that hollows you out. She turned to the door. I didn't stop her. Lila, don't do this. I said, my voice quieter now, but too late. She opened the door. The cold air rushed in. She looked back at me once. I hope one day you realize what you pushed away. Then she was gone. I stood there, hand on the counter, too stubborn to run after her. I thought she'd come back. She always did after fights. We'd sulk, ignore each other for a day, then pretend nothing happened. But the hours stretched, midnight passed, her bed stayed empty. By morning, panic bloomed. Mom was already up making coffee, unaware of the storm. I asked if Lila had come back. She shook her head, still half asleep. She's probably out with friends. I wanted to believe that, but I knew better. I walked the streets, drove through the neighborhoods, checked the diner, asked her friends, nothing. Her phone was off, her backpack was gone. She hadn't taken her laptop, but her journal was missing, the one she wrote everything in. That night I sat on her bed. I saw her jacket still slung over the chair, her favorite necklace still hanging on the mirror, a half-drunk bottle of water on the nightstand. It didn't look like someone who was leaving for good. Unless she'd planned it that way to vanish and make it hurt. I didn't tell my parents about our fight. I didn't say a word. When they finally called the police, I stood beside them face blank, pretending this was all new to me. She didn't say anything, the officer asked. I shook my head. No, nothing. I was good at lying. Too good. And that scared me. I became the person everyone leaned on, the strong one, the brother who didn't fall apart. I kept myself busy at the garage, fixed cars like muscle memory, went through the motions while guilt gnawed at me from the inside out. At night, I lay awake wondering if she was somewhere safe, or if she had met something darker. What if she'd walked into the woods? What if she'd run into the wrong person? What if it was all my fault I didn't tell anyone about the message? Yeah, she left me a message. It came the day after she left, a voice, message 2 minutes long. She sounded calm, almost too calm. She said, Carter. I didn't want to leave things like that, but I can't stay here, not anymore. I don't know where I'm going yet, but I need to go. You'll understand one day, maybe you already do. Then a pause. Her voice trembled. Please don't come looking. I deleted it. I never backed it up. I never told anyone it existed. And to this day, that may be the thing I regret most. Because if I had kept it, maybe they would have stopped searching so hard. Maybe Mom wouldn't have blamed herself. Maybe I wouldn't be the only one who knew she chose to disappear. But I did what I always did. I covered it up, buried it deep. And now someone's digging again. The woman who came by the garage. She said her name was Elise. She claimed to be a writer researching small-town disappearances. But something about her felt off. Her questions were too pointed, too personal. She asked about the voicemail. How the hell did she know about the voicemail? I told her I didn't know what she was talking about. She just smiled and handed me her card. Elise Monroe, investigative journalist. She paused at the door, then added, You should really listen to the things you think are gone. They have a way of coming back. After Elise left, I sat in the office of the garage long after closing, staring at her card. The name Elise Monroe was printed in clean, sharp letters almost too perfect for a town like ours. This wasn't someone passing through for fluff pieces on local legends. She knew something. She was here for me. I replayed our short conversation over and over, her calm confidence, the way she said the things you think are gone. It sent a chill through my bones, because the only thing I thought was truly gone was that message, the one I deleted, the one no one was ever supposed to hear. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the couch with the TV on mute, flickering colors painting the ceiling in soft pulses, and in my head I kept hearing Layla's voice. Please don't come looking. What if Elise had found the message, somehow recovered it? Maybe Lila sent it to someone else. Or maybe Elise wasn't just a stranger at all. Maybe she knew Lila. By morning, I'd convinced myself it didn't matter. If I kept my head down, she'd leave town, but deep down, I knew better. People like Elise don't fly across states for hunches. She was digging, and I was standing on the buried truth. I went to work like normal, changed oil, replaced a transmission, but I couldn't stop looking at the door, half expecting her to return with a recorder in one hand and a police officer in the other. Instead, it was someone else who came. Anna, Lila's best friend from high school. I hadn't seen her in years, not since the 3rd anniversary of Lila's disappearance, when she spoke at the candlelight vigil. She hadn't changed much, still sharp-eyed, still holding herself like she had something to prove. Can we talk? She asked. We sat on the concrete steps out back away from the street noise. She got right to the point. Who was that woman talking to you yesterday, Elise? Said she's a journalist. Anna nodded slowly. She asked me questions too, about Lila, about that night. I swallowed hard. What did you tell her? Only what I knew. But Carter, she asked me if you and Lila had argued before she disappeared. My stomach dropped. What did you say? I said I didn't know. Because I didn't. She looked at me, then straight through me, but now I'm wondering if I should have. I looked away. Anna went on. You were always the quiet one, the strong one. But after she disappeared, you didn't cry once at the vigils. You didn't speak at the funeral service. You just stayed in the background, and I thought that was how you grieved. But maybe it was something else. I felt the weight pressing in, 10 years of silence squeezing tighter. I didn't hurt her, I said finally. I didn't say you did. She stood and dusted off her jeans. But Carter, if there's something you didn't say back then, something you're still not saying, it's time. Then she left, and I sat there hollowed out. Later that night, I walked into Lila's room again. My parents had left it untouched, like a museum frozen in 2013. The posters on the wall, the chipped nail polish bottles, the stack of old books beside her bed, all of it waiting for her. I opened her desk drawer and found her journal, the same one I'd searched for all those years ago. Except this time, it was there, and it had a page dog-eared. I pulled it open with shaking hands. The entry was dated 2 weeks before she disappeared. Carter doesn't see me. Not really. I wish he did. I wish he could understand that I'm not running away. I'm trying to survive. If I stay, I'll disappear in a different way. I closed the journal and leaned back, breath shallow. She hadn't just left me a message on the phone. She left echoes everywhere, and I had ignored them all. The next morning, I called the number on Elise's card. She answered on the second ring. Carter Rowe. She said my name like she'd been waiting for it. Meet me, I said, tonight. We agreed on the old coffee shop near the high school. It was half closed, more storage than cafe now, but I knew the owner. He let us sit in the back while he cleaned up. Elise brought a folder with her, thick, worn. She slid it across the table. Inside were clippings, police reports, photos, copies of the missing person posters, and at the very bottom, a printed transcript, the voicemail. My heart stopped. I found it through a recovered cloud backup, she said. You didn't delete it as completely as you thought. I stared at it. The words blurred. I felt like throwing up. She leaned forward. Why didn't you tell anyone about it? I didn't answer. She tried a different question. Do you think she's alive? This time I looked up. I don't know. I thought I did, but now I'm not sure of anything. She nodded. I think you're ready to know what I found. I didn't speak. She pulled out a photograph, one that wasn't part of the police file. It was recent, and the woman in the photo. She looked exactly like Lila. I couldn't take my eyes off the photo. It was grainy, taken from a distance, someone in a brown hoodie walking through a farmer's market head, slightly down, sunglasses on, but the posture, the shape of her face, the small scar above her eyebrow. It looked just like Lila, like she hadn't aged a day. Elise tapped the photo. This was taken 4 weeks ago in a small town outside Asheville, North Carolina. I was chasing a different story when someone mentioned seeing a woman who looked like a girl from a missing persons flyer. I almost didn't follow it. I reached out and touched the edge of the picture. Are you sure I'm not saying it's definitely her? But I am saying whoever this is, she fits the age, the look, and the timeline. And she's been living off the grid, no ID, no social media, paid in cash, and calls herself Lily. I almost choked. Lily Elise nodded, close enough to her real name to make you wonder if she wanted to be found. My thoughts spun. Lila. Lily. 10 years of silence, and now maybe she was only a few hours away. But then a darker thought crept in. If that's her, why hasn't she come back? Elise leaned back, eyes studying me. That's what I hoped you could help me figure out. I felt the weight of her words slam into me like a brick. I had begged the universe for closure, and now that it might be here, I didn't know if I had the courage to face it. I drove home in a daze, my fingers twitching on the steering wheel the whole way. Every red light felt like a punishment. Every familiar street suddenly felt foreign. At home, I opened the garage and sat in the old recliner tucked in the corner. The smell of oil and rust grounded me. This was the place I came to think to hide to work until my thoughts were too tired to hurt me. But now there was nowhere to hide from the question burning through my chest. What if Lila had never really been missing, just gone? And what if she'd stayed gone because of me? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened my laptop, logged into the family cloud, and searched the backups. Deep buried folders, password-protected memories, and there it was. The old security footage from the garage. I'd forgotten it even existed. I played it. The date October 14th, the night Lila left. The footage was black and white, grainy but clear enough. You could see her walk into the garage around 11:20 p.m. She was holding her journal. She looked up at the camera once, right at it. Then she opened the passenger door of my truck, placed something on the seat, then closed it and walked away. I paused it, zoomed in. My heart stopped. The object on the seat. It was her silver locket. The one Mom gave her the year Dad got sick. The one she never took off. It hadn't been missing after all. It had been in my truck. I just never noticed. Or maybe I never looked. I leaned back in the chair, air catching in my throat. She didn't leave to vanish. She left a message, and I never saw it. The next morning I called Elise. I'm going there, I said, to Asheville. She was quiet for a moment. Then I'll meet you there. By noon I was packing a bag. I told my parents I needed a few days away. They didn't ask why. Mom just hugged me tighter than usual, like maybe she sensed something was about to change. On the highway, my mind was a mess. Memories of Lila flooded back in snapshots. Her laugh when I tried to dance. Her angry scribbles in her notebooks when she was blocked. The way she used to tuck her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. I wondered what she looked like now. If it really was her in the photo. And what I'd say if it was. Would she forgive me? Would I even deserve it? When I arrived in Asheville, Elise was already waiting. She had mapped out the farmer's market, the bookstore Lily supposedly worked at, and the diner she'd been seen in. We didn't waste time. We went straight to the bookstore, a little shop tucked between a plant nursery and a bakery, the kind of place Lila would have loved. I walked in, heart hammering. A woman was at the counter, back turned, brown hoodie, hair tied up in a bun. Elise? I whispered. She looked too. The woman turned, and it wasn't her, not Lila, a stranger. I felt the air rush out of me. Elise placed a hand on my shoulder. That's not the only lead. There's still the diner. So we went there next. Same story. Close. Almost. But not her. By the end of the day, I was drained. Hope is a cruel thing. It builds you up just to drop you harder. We sat on a bench outside the town square. I really thought it might be her, I said. Elise looked out at the people passing by. It still might be. Maybe not today. But somewhere. This town. It's the first real lead in years. And then she said something I didn't expect. Carter, can I ask you something real? I nodded. If Lila is alive, and you find her, what are you going to say I didn't answer right away? Because I didn't know. How do you apologize for 10 years of silence? How do you ask someone if they ever missed you when you were the reason they left? I looked at her and said, the only honest thing I could, I don't know. But I think it's time I stop pretending I don't need to find out. I didn't go back home right away. Even though the leads in Asheville hadn't panned out, I wasn't ready to return to the same routine, the grease-stained coveralls, the shallow nods from people who had long since stopped asking how I was doing. I needed to sit in the discomfort of everything Elise had stirred up. I needed to feel it, the weight of the years, the silence, the choices I made and the ones I didn't. So I booked one more night at the motel. Elise and I had dinner at a nearby diner. We didn't talk much at first. The air between us was thick with what-ifs, but somewhere between the half-eaten fries and the second refill of coffee, she broke the silence. You know, she said gently, there's a reason your sister left clues. I looked at her. Clues. The locket, the voicemail, the journal. They weren't accidents. She didn't just disappear to hurt you. She wanted to be heard even if she couldn't stay. That idea knocked the wind out of me. I'd always viewed her leaving as punishment for me for the family for not being enough. But what if it wasn't? What if it was a plea? When I got back to the motel, I couldn't sleep. My mind wouldn't stop turning. So I got up, opened my bag, and pulled out Lila's journal again. I hadn't dared read past the dog-eared page, but I did now. Page by page, her voice came back to life. She wrote about the feeling of suffocation not from our family, but from the weight of expectations. The way no one ever asked what she wanted. The pressure to be cheerful, to be helpful, to be the glue in a family that was slowly unraveling. And then I came across this entry I told Carter about the scholarship today. I hoped he'd be proud, but he just looked afraid and angry. I think he thought I was leaving him behind. Maybe I am, but not in the way he thinks. That sentence tore through me. I remembered the look in her eyes that night. It wasn't defiance. It was disappointment. She came to me hoping for support, and I gave her judgment. I didn't protect her. I crushed her. The next morning, Elise and I said goodbye outside the motel. She was headed back to her next assignment, but she gave me a small envelope before she left. There's a contact in Asheville who might know more, a librarian. Her name's Tess. Lila spent a lot of time there if she was here. I didn't get a chance to dig deeper, but maybe you can. I nodded, clutching the envelope. You're not the villain in this story, Carter, she said before walking away. But you're not the victim either. You still get to choose what kind of ending this has. It took me another day to build the courage, but eventually I walked into the town library. It was quiet, warm, peaceful in a way that hit me like a memory I didn't know I had. Tess was a middle-aged woman with silver hair and glasses that kept slipping down her nose. She looked up when I approached. Can I help you? I cleared my throat. I'm looking for someone. She might have gone by Lily. Brown hair, mid-20s, writes a lot, kept to herself. She squinted at me, then smiled faintly. I might know who you mean. She motioned for me to follow her into the back where the old community board stood covered in faded flyers and event notices. She pointed to a small flyer yellowed at the edges, writing Circle Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Ask for L. My chest clenched. Tess tapped the paper gently. She ran that group for about a year, left suddenly, said she needed to move on. But she was kind, intense, always watching the clock. Did she say why she left? She said something strange. Tess replied. She said, "It's been 10 years. I think it's time I face it." I froze. 10 years. Exactly. It had to be her. Tess reached behind the counter and pulled out a small manila folder. She left this for someone. Didn't say who. Just told me they'll know when they see it. I've kept it all this time. She handed it to me. My fingers trembled as I peeled it open. Inside was a letter, written in her handwriting. Carter, I don't know if you'll ever see this. I don't know if you've forgiven me. But I want you to know I didn't leave because I hated you. I left because I couldn't survive being small anymore. I hoped you'd understand eventually, but I also knew I didn't give you a chance to. I miss you. I hope you're okay. If you ever come looking, know that I'm ready to see you again. When you are. I closed the letter, pressing it to my chest. Tears spilled freely down my cheeks for the first time in years. She was alive. She didn't hate me. She was waiting. I don't remember how I got back to my car. I don't remember how long I sat there with the engine off. All I remember is this: for the first time in 10 years, I felt something like hope. I drove back to our town, with the letter on the passenger seat buckled in like it was alive. Every mile between Asheville and home felt different, now lighter, but also heavier, like I was carrying both a second chance and a reckoning. The streetlights blinked by like old ghosts as I pulled into the driveway. Our house looked the same as it always had: cracked porch rail, overgrown hedges, the soft glow of kitchen light, where Mom always left it on for me. But something had changed inside me. For a decade, I let silence rot the connection between us all. I thought protecting the truth was an act of loyalty or survival. Now I realized it had been cowardice, and I was done being a coward. I stepped inside. Mom was at the stove heating something up. She turned, surprised. "You're home early." "Didn't find what I thought I would," I said, hanging my coat. Then I corrected myself. "Actually, I did." She narrowed her eyes, sensing something in my tone. "Carter." I held up the letter. She stared at it, then at me. "What is that?" I walked to the table and sat down. "You should probably sit too." And then I told her everything: about the fight, about the voicemail, about Elise and the photo and the journal entries, about the locket in the truck, about the woman in Asheville, about the letter from Tess. I left nothing out. Mom didn't say a word the whole time. Her hands trembled slightly, but she didn't cry. When I finished, I slid the letter across the table. She picked it up with careful fingers, read it slowly. Her lips moved with each word, and when she finished, she closed her eyes. "She's alive?" she asked quietly. "I think so." "And she left because she couldn't breathe here?" I nodded, because she needed to find herself. Mom sat back staring at the ceiling like she was trying to see the past with new eyes. "I always thought we were losing her to something dark, that we failed her." "We didn't fail her," I said, "but we didn't see her either." Mom covered her face with both hands. "God, Carter, why didn't you tell us?" I felt the familiar guilt rise. I was ashamed. I thought it was my fault. Maybe it still is. "No," she said firmly. "It's not just yours. We all missed it. I was too busy grieving your father. Your dad was drowning in work and pills. You were just a kid, too, trying to hold it all together." She reached across the table and took my hand. "You're not the only one who needs to ask for forgiveness." We sat there for a long time, just holding on to the letter like it could pull us closer to her. That night, I couldn't sleep again, so I went into the garage, not to work, but to look, to really look. I pulled open old drawers, dug through toolboxes and plastic bins I hadn't opened in years, and I found it: Lila's old tape recorder, the one she used to carry everywhere when she was working on story ideas. I popped in the last cassette still inside. Static. Then her voice. "Note to self. If I ever get out of this town, I'm going to write something honest. Not about monsters or haunted houses, but about guilt. About the way it lives in your chest like a second heartbeat. Maybe that's the real horror." I closed my eyes. She hadn't just vanished. She had tried to understand, and now it was time for me to do the same. The next morning, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Anna. I told her I owed her a real conversation. She agreed to meet. We sat at a bench near the park where she and Lila used to sneak cigarettes behind the trees. "I should have told you everything years ago," I said. Anna didn't interrupt. I told her about the letter, about the photo, about everything Elise had uncovered. "I don't know if it'll ever make it right," I said, "but you deserve to know too." She looked at me, eyes glassy. She used to say she felt like she was screaming into a pillow, that no one could hear her. "I think she would have been proud of you today." That hit me harder than I expected. She reached into her purse and handed me something. "I was going to give this to your mom, but maybe it's for you." It was a necklace. Lila's. Not the locket, but the beaded necklace she made in 8th grade, the one she gave Anna after a fight. "She wanted you to have it, eventually," Anna said. "She told me that before she left. She said, 'Give it to Carter when he's ready to remember me as a person, not a ghost.'" I felt something shift inside. Like maybe the past didn't have to be a trap anymore. Like maybe it could be a bridge. Later that week, Elise called again. "I've got another lead," she said. "Stronger this time." "You ready?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes." The new lead brought me to a quiet town called Mason Ridge, population barely over 2,000, a place tucked in the hills like it was trying to hide from the world. Elise had emailed me a street name, a blurry address number, and a description that made my heart skip a beat. Brown house with green shutters. She works at the local bookstore on weekends under the name Lily May. No one knows her last name. The drive there was surreal. My hands kept tightening on the wheel. My jaw ached from how long I'd been clenching it. Every song on the radio sounded like a goodbye. And somewhere inside me, a boy who used to be a brother begged me not to turn around. But I didn't. Not this time. I arrived just before dusk. The house was exactly like she described, small weathered front porch, sagging slightly under the weight of potted plants. It looked lived in, peaceful. I sat in the truck for nearly 20 minutes, watching from across the street like a coward. And then, she stepped out. She was older now, taller. Her hair was longer, dyed a darker shade, loosely tied back. But it was her, no doubt in my mind. She carried herself differently, calmer, lighter. But her eyes were the same. Even from this far, I could see the weight behind them. She didn't see me. She locked the door, grabbed her bag, and walked down the porch steps, humming softly. I didn't move. I didn't call out. I just watched as she walked toward the bookstore, down the block, turning the corner out of sight. I sat there for another hour. I wanted to run after her, but something inside me told me, not yet, so I waited until morning. The next day, I walked into the bookstore just after they opened. It was warm and smelled like cedar and paper. I stood there for a long time before I saw her. She was organizing a shelf near the back, dressed in a simple sweater and jeans, hair tucked behind her ear just like she used to do when she was nervous. She didn't notice me right away. When she finally turned and looked up, her face didn't change. She blinked once, twice, then slowly set the book down. "Hi," I said, my voice dry. "Hi," she replied. And just like that, 10 years of absence collapsed into a moment that felt both impossible and inevitable. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She didn't run. She just stared. "You came," she whispered. I wasn't sure if I should. Her eyes glistened. I wasn't sure if I wanted you to. We stood in silence for what felt like years. Then she motioned toward the back exit. "Come on, let's talk." We sat on a bench behind the shop, out of sight, just like when we were kids, hiding behind the garage with contraband sodas and bad secrets. "I read the letter," I said. She nodded slowly. "I hoped you would." "Why now, Lila? Why did I write it, or why did I leave it behind both?" She folded her arms across her chest, "Because part of me always hoped you'd come looking. But I didn't want you to until you were ready, and I knew you weren't, not then." I swallowed the lump in my throat. I was angry, at you, at myself, at everything. "I know," she said. "Me too." She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "I wasn't trying to punish you, Carter. I just couldn't stay. I couldn't keep being who everyone needed me to be. I was disappearing in a different way. I should have seen it," I whispered. "No," she said gently but firmly. "You were a kid too, and you were hurting just as much, but we didn't know how to talk about it. Not really." Tears blurred my vision. "I thought I lost you forever." She looked at me. "And I thought you'd hate me forever." Neither of us spoke for a long time. Then she pulled something from her bag. It was the locket, the same one she'd left in my truck. She placed it in my hand. "You were the only one who ever saw me," she said, "even when you didn't understand me." I held it tightly. It felt like forgiveness, or the beginning of it. "I'm sorry," I finally said. "For what? For not running after you that night. For letting 10 years pass in silence." She smiled softly. "You didn't let 10 years pass. You survived them. So did I." Then she looked me in the eyes and said the last thing I ever expected to hear. "I want to come home. We didn't rush things." Even though everything in me wanted to scoop Lila into a hug and drive her straight back home, I knew this wasn't a movie. There was no swelling music or perfect ending. There was just 10 years of distance between us and a fragile thread pulling us slowly back together. We spent the next few hours walking through the town. She showed me the coffee shop she loved, the tree by the river where she liked to write, the thrift store where she found the sweater she wore the night she left. "It felt like armor," she said with a small laugh, tugging at the fabric. "Like if I wore something that didn't smell like home, I could pretend I wasn't scared." I didn't interrupt, just listened. That's what I should have done all those years ago. She told me about the first town she ran to, the basement apartment she shared with 3 other women, one of whom taught her how to bartend. The night she cried so hard she made herself sick. The year she spent just learning to breathe without guilt. But I always kept an eye on home, she admitted. Social media, news. I even followed the garage's page for a while anonymously. I saw the new sign you put up. You saw that. She smiled. The new logo was ugly, but it made me weirdly proud. I laughed. It felt strange and beautiful and wrong all at once, laughing with someone who had been a ghost in my life for so long. Then she grew quiet. There were moments, she said, when I almost came back. I'd write letters, then rip them up, pack a bag, then unpack it. And then one day I just stopped trying. I figured if you hadn't come after me by then, you weren't going to. I nodded, shame rising in my chest. You're right. I should have come sooner. I thought you hated me. She turned toward me, eyes calm but piercing. I didn't hate you. I hated what we couldn't say to each other. And in that moment, I realized just how much both of us had been shaped by silence. We'd inherited it. From our parents, from our town, from the unspoken belief that emotions were meant to be buried, not shared. But now here we were, digging them up piece by piece. She showed me her apartment above the bookstore. It was small, cozy, bookshelves lined with worn-out paperbacks, photos clipped to string lights, a half-finished manuscript open on her desk. You're writing again, I said, touching the stack of pages. She shrugged, trying to. It's a novel about a girl who disappears and the brother who never forgives himself. I met her eyes, happy ending. She smirked, still deciding. We talked until the sky turned dark and the streetlights flickered on, and then quietly she said, I think I'm ready. For what, to come home? My throat tightened. You sure? She nodded. But I want to come back as me, not the version everyone remembers. I can't go back to pretending nothing happened. I wouldn't want you to. She looked away. What about Mom? She doesn't know everything, not yet, but she will. And Dad? I hesitated. He's gone. Heart attack. 2 years ago. Her face crumpled just slightly, her body curling inward. I always thought I'd see him again. Even if just once. I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. He talked about you more than he ever admitted. He kept your old poetry books in his office. He never let Mom donate them. She nodded, eyes glassy. I missed his laugh. And his pancakes. God, those awful lumpy pancakes. We both smiled. It felt like stitching a wound, one tender, thread-thin laugh at a time. I offered to stay the night in town, let her think things through. She agreed. I'll pack tomorrow, she said. 1 bag, that's all I need. I'll be here. I said, whenever you're ready. We stood outside her building, neither of us wanting to say goodbye again. Before I walked away, she stopped me. Carter. Yeah. Thank you for coming. I smiled. I'm not sure I deserve your thanks, but I'm really glad I did. The next morning, I stood outside her apartment building again, this time with a cup of coffee in each hand, like it was just a normal Sunday. Like we hadn't spent the last decade carrying unspeakable grief between us. She answered the door, barefoot, hair damp from a shower, a look in her eyes that mixed nervous energy with something else. Resolve. You came back, she said with a small smile. Didn't want to risk another 10-year silence, I said, handing her the coffee. She took it, curled her hands around the warmth, and stepped aside. I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept wondering if I was doing the right thing. And I asked. She looked at me firm now. I still think I am. Her bag sat by the door, one single duffel, just like she said. She walked around the room, turning off lights, picking up loose papers, taking one last look at her world, a world she'd built on her own. One she was now leaving behind, not because she had to, but because she chose to. Are you scared? I asked. She nodded. Of everything. But mostly of being someone's daughter again, someone's sister. What if I don't fit anymore? You're not returning to a role, I said. You're coming back as Lila. That's enough. She looked down, swallowed hard, then picked up her bag. Let's go. The drive home was mostly quiet, but not tense. Comfortable, like the space between us was finally softening. Every so often she'd point out a song on the radio or ask if the diner on Main Street was still open. I told her about Mom's garden, how she started growing tomatoes even though she was terrible at it, how she never took down Lila's high school graduation photo from the hallway. She didn't even go to my graduation, Lila said, half joking. I glanced at her. She shrugged. It's fine. I didn't blame her. We pulled into town just after sunset. The streets looked the same, small houses, cracked sidewalks, the pharmacy where we used to steal candy. When we pulled into the driveway, the porch light was already on. I think Mom sensed it. Lila hesitated before opening the door. "You ready?" I asked. "No," she whispered. "But I'm doing it anyway." Mom was in the kitchen, her back to us. She turned at the sound of the door, and the moment her eyes landed on Lila, her breath hitched. For a second, no one moved. Then Mom stepped forward, her face unreadable. Lila clutched her bag like it was a shield. She began, voice trembling. "I didn't know if you'd want to see me." Mom didn't speak. She just walked forward and pulled her into the tightest hug I'd ever seen her give. Lila dropped the bag and melted into her mother's arms. They both sobbed, not loud, but deep, raw. I turned away, gave them the moment, went out to the porch and sat on the steps, letting the air fill my lungs. It smelled like summer, like the last time we were all under this roof. Eventually, they joined me, Lila on one side, Mom on the other. We sat in silence for a while. Then Mom said, "You hungry?" Lila laughed through a sniffle. "Starving." We ate leftover stew and toasted bread. We didn't talk about the past, not that night. We just existed together as a mother, a son, a daughter who had returned from the edge. After dinner, Mom disappeared into the hallway and came back holding something small in her hands. A faded pink notebook, Lila's old journal from middle school. "You left this," Mom said. Lila blinked at it. "You kept it?" "Of course," Mom said. "You're my daughter." Lila took it with shaking hands, opened it, and smiled. She traced her fingers along the doodles and old poems, like they were fragments of a life she almost forgot she lived. That night, Lila stayed in her old room. I heard her laughing with Mom through the wall. The sound was strange, familiar, like it had never left, just been muted all this time. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about second chances, about forgiveness, about what we do when life hands us the rare opportunity to fix what we thought was broken forever. The morning after Lila came home, I woke up early expecting to find the house still and quiet like before, when we all walked around pretending we weren't walking through a graveyard. But the smell of toast and brewed coffee pulled me into the kitchen where she stood in her pajamas, humming while buttering bread. I froze in the doorway, stunned by the familiarity. She looked over her shoulder. "Morning." I blinked. "This feels unreal." She grinned. "I know." I kept waiting to wake up in my apartment above the bookstore. I sat at the kitchen table. Mom was still asleep. Sunlight spilled through the curtains in long streaks across the counter. "So what now?" I asked. Lila set down 2 plates and joined me. "I don't know. I don't expect everything to go back to normal." "Maybe we don't need normal," I said. "Maybe we need new." She thought for a moment. "I like that." She looked around the kitchen, her eyes landing on the family photos lining the walls. "It's weird. Everything is the same, but I don't feel like the same girl who left." "You're not," I said, "and I'm not the same brother." There was a pause. Then she reached across the table, touching my hand. "Thank you for coming to find me." I swallowed. "You left the trail." Maybe, but it still took courage to follow it. After breakfast, we walked the neighborhood like we used to as kids, past the tree where she broke her arm falling off the tire swing, past the old ice cream shop now closed down. Every step was like peeling back a layer of time, except now we saw everything through different eyes. Some people recognized her, some stared. No one said anything cruel, but their silence was heavy. "You okay?" I asked. "I expected worse," she said. "People remember what they want to remember. Let them." That afternoon, she went through her room carefully, reverently. She picked up old sketchbooks, letters from high school friends, a shoebox of concert stubs and movie tickets. "God," she whispered, "it's like I buried a version of myself here." "You can take what you want," I said. "Leave what you don't." She nodded. "I'll keep the memories, not the regrets." Then came the harder part. That evening, we drove to the cemetery. Dad's grave. I offered to stay in the car, but she shook her head. "I want you there." We stood in silence before the tombstone. I glanced at her, unsure what to expect, but she wasn't crying. She was smiling soft, sad, full of memory. "I thought he'd hate me for leaving," she said. "He never did," I replied. "He blamed himself. We all did. I used to hear his laugh in my dreams," she said. "It was the only part of home that didn't scare me." She crouched and traced the name engraved in stone. "Hi, Dad," she whispered. "I'm back." I turned away, tears stinging my eyes. We didn't say much on the drive home, but the silence wasn't empty. It was whole. That night, after Mom had gone to bed, Lila and I sat in the garage, the same spot we used to sneak sodas and tell secrets. "I kept dreaming about this place," she said. "Even when I hated it, it still pulled at me." "Maybe that's what home is," I said. "The place that holds your ghosts until you're ready to face them." She looked at me, her expression softening. "You were never the reason I left Carter. You were the reason I thought I might come back someday." I breathed that in, let it settle. Then I handed her something. It was her old key, still on the sunflower keychain she made when she was 12. "I kept it," I said. She took it slowly, holding it like it weighed more than it should. "I don't know what I'll do next," she said. "You don't have to figure it all out at once." She nodded. "But I think I want to stay, at least for a while. Maybe help out at the library, write again. I think that sounds perfect." She leaned her head on my shoulder. We sat like that until the sky turned black and the stars blinked into view. Word spreads fast in a small town, especially when someone returns from the dead. By the end of the week, everyone knew Lila was back. Some people came by the house with casseroles and awkward hugs. Others stared from a distance, unsure whether to say anything or let the past lie where it had fallen. But through it all, Lila held herself steady, not pretending to be unfazed, but refusing to let the whispers dictate who she was anymore. Mom took the news harder than I expected, not because she wasn't happy, but because she was drowning in guilt. "I should have fought harder," she told me one morning as we washed dishes together. "I should have noticed she was slipping away. You were grieving, Dad," I said, "and holding the whole house together." "We all missed it." I think she said, drying a plate. I was afraid to look too closely, afraid of what I'd see. That struck something deep in me. We were all afraid of confrontation, of confession, of change. Fear was the language we spoke most fluently in our family. That evening, Lila asked me to walk with her to the old high school. It was closed down now, waiting on some new developer to tear it apart and build something shinier. We hopped the gate and sat on the bleachers under the dim orange sky. "This place made me feel small," she said. "Like my voice didn't matter unless I fit into the mold." "Everyone feels that in high school," I said. She nodded, but it stuck with me, even years later. Every time I tried to speak up for myself, I'd hear the voices again, too much, too intense, too emotional. So I ran. I looked at her. "Running didn't make you weak, Lila. It gave you time to become who you were meant to be." She smiled faintly. "That's kind of poetic, Carter. Since when do you talk like that?" "Since I started listening more." She laughed softly, her face glowing in the fading light. "I missed this. Us." "So did I." She turned serious again. "I want to do something. What I want to tell my story, the real one. Not the version people whispered or assumed. I want to stand in front of them all and say I left and I survived and I came back not because I'm perfect, but because I'm finally whole." I was quiet for a moment. Then I nodded. "Then you should." A week later, Lila stood on the stage of the community center. She had posted about it online, a conversation about returning, and to our surprise, the place filled up. Not just old friends, but strangers too. People who remembered her disappearance. People who knew what it was like to run, to vanish, to feel forgotten. I sat in the front row next to Mom. When Lila stepped up to the mic, the room went completely still. She began softly, but clearly. "When I left this town 10 years ago, I didn't leave because I hated it. I left because I didn't know how to breathe here. I didn't know how to be myself without disappointing someone, and I didn't have the words then to explain it, so I vanished. But I never stopped thinking about home, about my brother, my mom, about the version of me that people were still carrying in their heads. Today I want to set her free. I am not the scared girl who left. I am the woman who chose to come back. And this time, I'm not asking for permission. I'm just asking to be seen." Silence followed, and then applause. Not thunderous, but real, respectful, warm. I glanced at Mom. She was crying. Later that night, Lila found me on the porch. She sat beside me, tucking her legs under her like she used to as a kid. "You proud of me?" she asked. "I've never been prouder." She leaned her head against mine. "I think I'm gonna stay for a while," she whispered. "Really stay." I nodded. "Then let's make this place feel like home again. The house is different now. Not physically, the walls are still the same off-white. The porch still creaks in the same spots, and the faucet in the kitchen still drips, no matter how tightly you turn it off. But something intangible has shifted. It feels fuller, warmer, like it exhaled after holding its breath for 10 long years. Lila has been home for a month now, and not just staying here, living here. She's found rhythm in this town that once made her feel caged. She started volunteering at the library, picked up her writing again, and even held a free journaling workshop at the community center last weekend. People showed up, not just out of curiosity, but out of care. They listened, they showed up for her, and in doing so, maybe they were showing up for themselves too. I've watched her grow every day, not back into the girl she was, but into the woman she was always becoming. Stronger, softer, sharper in her truths, and I've changed too. For the first time in my life, I started seeing a therapist, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to stop holding my pain like it was sacred. I wanted to lay it down and let it breathe. Mom joined me for a session once. We sat in a quiet room and talked about Dad, about Lila, about the silence that wrapped around our family like a second skin. We cried, we laughed, we forgave. Little by little, the pieces came together. There was one moment a few days ago that I think I'll carry with me forever. It was a rainy afternoon. Lila and I were sitting in the garage listening to the storm patter against the roof. She was flipping through one of her old journals, and I was tuning up an old carburetor, the smell of oil filling the air. She looked up suddenly and said, "Do you remember that night?" I paused. "Which one?" "The last one, before I left." I met her eyes. "I think about it all the time," I said, "and I hate myself for it." She shook her head. "Don't." "But no, listen to me." She closed the journal and placed it on her lap. "I've replayed that moment 100 times too. But the truth is, I didn't leave because of you. I left because I needed to find myself. You didn't push me away, I just didn't know how to bring you with me." I felt my throat tighten. She leaned forward, placed her hand over mine. "You don't need to keep punishing yourself for something that was never your burden alone." And in that quiet moment, something inside me finally loosened. A forgiveness I didn't know how to ask for, given freely. Sometimes people ask why she came back. Why now? Why after 10 years she always gives the same answer? Because I wasn't running anymore. I was ready to be known. That answer sits with me in a way that goes beyond words. It reminds me that love, real hard, healing. Love isn't loud. It's not grand gestures or perfect timing. It's sitting with someone in the wreckage and saying, "I'm not leaving." It's showing up even if it took you a decade to do it. We visit Dad's grave together now, every Sunday. Lila talks to him like he never left. She tells him about her week, the kids at the library, the story she's writing, a fictionalized version of her journey with a brother who learns to listen before it's too late. She jokes that it'll be her debut novel. I tell her it's already a bestseller in my heart. And me, I'm learning to be something new too. Not just the older brother who held it all together, but the man who knows when to let go. I stopped seeing guilt as a chain and started treating it like a compass. It pointed me back to her, and in some strange way, maybe that means it served its purpose. Lila and I aren't perfect. We still argue sometimes over the thermostat, over whether pineapple belongs on pizza, over the endings of movies. But every fight ends with a laugh now, or at least a long pause followed by an "I'm sorry." We say "I love you" more often, not just in words, but in presence, in the showing up, in the staying. I never expected the story to have a resolution. For so long I thought the best I could do was carry the wound gracefully. But what I've learned, what Lila taught me, is that some stories don't end with closure. They end with choice, and we both chose to try again, not as the people we used to be, but as the people we are now, imperfect, scarred, and stronger than ever. The truth behind my sister's disappearance wasn't just a secret I carried, it was a silence we all shared. But in choosing to break it, we found each other again. And if you've ever felt lost or like too much time has passed to make things right, I want you to know this: it's never too late to come home. It's never too late to be found. If you've ever carried a secret or lost someone you thought was gone for good, tell us your story in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to Ethan's Way for more stories about second chances, healing, and the power of family. SEO video description. SEO optimized YouTube video description, 150-200 words. My sister vanished 10 years ago, and I never told anyone the truth. For a decade I lived with the crushing guilt of a fight I never made right, a secret I buried, and a silence I thought would protect my family. Everyone believed she simply disappeared, but I knew better. I let her walk away, and I stayed silent while the world searched. Now, after 10 long years, a mysterious lead in a letter from the past forced me to confront everything I've run from. What really happened the night she left? Can lost siblings ever truly find their way back to each other? And when forgiveness finally knocks, will we answer? This is the story of betrayal, grief, and the road to redemption, told from the heart of a brother who nearly lost everything and found something even greater in return. Subscribe to Ethan's Way for more gripping, emotional first-person stories that explore truth, pain, and healing. Storytelling, Akala drama, Akala family, Akala all forgiveness, Akala all truth, Akala redemption, Akala Ethan stories.